PowerShell was based on the same POSIX specifications as Bash and Z Shell, so you'll see a lot of things that are very familiar at first, and then a few things that start to appear a bit different. Instead of being based on characters, everything in PowerShell is an object. Lists and hashes are first-class citizenry, complete with methods and operators as you'd expect. Modern looping constructs. Also has hash tables, call them maps or dictionaries if you like, but they work pretty much exactly as you would expect. .NET objects are strongly typed, and everything in PowerShell is an object. C-sharp's square bracket attributes are used for scoping, casting, and typing. Here we used square brackets XML to convert a string to an XML object. Objects and types are fundamental to the language, so you can of course declare your own types on the fly. There's even C-sharp style class definition and binding. People who've had a little bit of past exposure to PowerShell often fear these dreaded word salad command lines that seem like academic Microsoft voodoo. These weird conventions are actually a big part of PowerShell's pervasive drive to save you key presses. You can write hieroglyphic terseness on par with Bash if that's really what you want, or one of many various levels of intermediate compactness depending on what you're typing or why you're typing it. We can lift a simple function definition straight from Bash or Z Shell, and that'll work. But everything in PowerShell is an object, even functions. One of the properties of function objects is that they can have a fingerprint with typed parameter lists and return types. The syntax is also a little more C-like than Bash or Z Shell, so you already know what this function is going to do, but is there a payoff for all of that? Well, for starters, there's automatic tab completion on parameters and arguments. And the .NET infrastructure leans into this for pervasive help. All of the built-in stuff has pretty deep and rich help. You can use get help or help, which gives you a paginated version. There's a -show window command if you want it in a window. There's also a -online if you want it in your browser. The help is pretty hefty, and my favorite thing is the -example section, which brings us back to what everyone hates at first, the weird naming convention, that verb -single noun. No amount of help is any use if you can't find the commands. Or aliases, and PowerShell likes its aliases. But how did you come across the most common Unix commands you probably use, like ls or grep or sed or org? You probably have to do a couple of takes at least to guess what this is going to do. At least here there's a pattern using the initials from that weird naming convention, where I was for invoke and WR was for web request. My earlier ls and dirs, built-in aliases for getChildItem, aka GCI. Files and directories are objects, and a directory listing is just a list or an array of those. Objects allow abstractions, tools become algorithms. GCI is dir and find all in one. An algorithm for querying object hierarchies like directories, networks, or the registry. So all well and good, but is any of this actually practically useful? I mean, with Linux and Bash, I can see the text and I can use the text and I can just get things done. Of course, that means I have to guess which of these two numbers is actually the process ID, and I get it wrong. With PowerShell, it's an object with members and methods. Those members and methods will let me inspect the object without having to run other commands or process text. And of course, one of the methods is kill. You can pipe objects to methods, functions, scripts, and commands. It's a pattern of patterns. That makes it easier to reason about things in PowerShell, it makes it easier to uncover and discover things, and it makes it easier to come up with practical solutions to day-to-day problems. MakeDear returns an object. And I'll finish with this piece of pure eye candy for the OPSI type people, where I create a session object that is in fact a connection to 5 different computers, demonstrate quickly how you can format text and produce a slightly prettier version of that little table of what platform each of those machines is. Finally, I reused that same session to fetch file objects from all of the hosts into one local array. Actual objects from the remote PCs that I can interact with just like local objects. That's PowerShell.